Yellow, yellow. Welcome back to another episode of the ICOF podcast. Today is going to be just a nice, chill conversation between me and you. Except it's going to be one way because I'm just going to be talking at you, and hopefully you will just respond to anything I have to say in the comments. That's how video content works in the world of social media. So, what we're going to talk about today is burnout, particularly how it pertains to the entrepreneurial artist, which is me and probably you if you clicked on this podcast, video, audio piece of content. And I want to talk about it because I definitely feel like I have experienced aspects of burnout myself in my career, in my short 5 year entrepreneurial art career as a muralist, as a content creator, as an illustrator, a painter, if you will. Um, and so I guess I'm just going to this isn't going to be like super informative. I'm not a psychologist or anything like that. I don't actually have a complete comprehensive understanding of what burnout even is. So we're going to be kind of talking about it in an abstract kind of way. Just kind of like what the symptoms may look like, what I think is particularly common for artists just based on like people I've talked to in similar careers to mine, and um, and just kind of my strategies of how I'm dealing with it, or just my plans for the future to keep on keeping on, if you will. Because basically the epitome of burnout, the 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 bottom threshold would be just giving up. Whether that's quitting your pursuit of art altogether, um, going back into the 9 to 5 workforce, and just kind of, ceasing to pursue a creative career, or God forbid, just like offing yourself. You know what I mean? I hate to be crass and macabre, but that would be the giving up of all giving up is, jumping off your roof. Don't do that. We're here together. We're hopefully going to avoid that demise. And if you feel like doing that, obviously seek help. This podcast is not to get you out of whatever that dark place is, whether it's burnout or some other deficit that you've got going on in your mental. Um, just disclaimer, you probably already knew that. Most of my channel and my content creation is for entertainment. I am not here to counsel anybody on any serious issues. We're just talking, we're just chatting, and kind of talking through things. This is kind of a little bit my therapy, me talking to myself into my phone lens right there. And speaking to you as an audience, I always love the feedback that I get from you guys in the comments. So keep it coming. Let's start a dialogue, and hopefully we can help support each other in solidarity at the very least. I do hope that these podcasts are doing that at the very least, and but certainly they are not a substitute for actual help psychologically. Um, and we'll talk about that here in a moment. So, what is burnout? I think the symptoms of burnout could look like a number of different things: lack of energy, lack of motivation, procrastination, being physically exhausted and tired, especially if you're overworked, if you're working overtime and just physically putting in a lot of hours into your work, that would probably result in the physical exhaustion. lack of sleep, um, maybe too much sleep, and that would be like the procrastination, like you're just mentally avoiding work because you're feeling burnt out, anxiety, depression. These are symptoms for sure. Um, Inability to perform executive functionings. This is something that I think is very prominent in burnout. Whether it's the chicken or the egg, I think is kind of to be discovered. I don't think we really know that about burnout psychology, um, whether executive functioning is leading to burnout or whether burnout leads to poor executive functioning. Executive functioning, let me try and get a definition for that. I think I have it written down somewhere. Basically, executive functioning is the cognitive activity in the frontal part of your brain that allows you to not only set goals and kind of outline tasks that you need to complete in order to achieve those goals, but it's actually our ability to carry out those tasks, to stay organized, to get organized, to kind of work through your checklist of your daily goals and what you're trying to achieve and actually carrying those out. Like executive function is basically the processes that allow you to check those things off the list and to carry out any sort of objective. So for me, this is definitely what causes my burnout or what leads me to feel burnout because I think at the end of the day, burnout is more or less a series of emotional states or conditions or just the emotional waves that are coming into our body that we are experiencing. And I think there's a lot of different kind of ideas around this. There are some people, like if you're familiar with Alex Hormozy, he's big in the creator space of business and particularly business to business negotiations and relations. He's kind of a beacon for people who are entrepreneurial minded and trying to start their own business. And he kind of claims that burnout isn't really real. He claims that like mental illnesses or mental conditions are diagnosing those is not super helpful and it's not even real. He thinks that emotions are something that we experience but can't really trust. And I see the validity in those statements. I think for some people, that advice doesn't really go very far and can be actually harmful and counterproductive. Um, but I find myself somewhere in between that mindset and that ideology and philosophy and the almost over diagnosis of mental illnesses and things like ADHD or depression or anxiety, stuff like that. I'm not trying to discredit those. I'm not trying to, like I said, substitute myself for any sort of real psychological or even philosophical authority at all. Um, but I do find myself somewhere in between, um, you know, over diagnosing these psychological conditions and, you know, allowing our emotions to control our overall state of being and capacity for joy in this life. And I think that while we're talking about burnout, this is very relevant emotions. I think it is an emotional condition to be feeling burnt out. And I think that we can find and deduce logic from those emotions to where they are real. We are experiencing our emotions. There's not, um, you know, there's a reality in that. And I think that that is worthy of at least paying attention to. Whether or not we allow our emotions to control our lives and to subject ourselves to some sort of destiny that emotions might make us feel like is upon us. Um, I do think that emotions can be useful tools. I think that's why we experience them. I think they're survival mechanisms within experiencing emotions, and we shouldn't ignore them, certainly. But I do think there's a balance there. There's a spectrum of those emotions, of how we react and respond to those. And I do think that there is immense utility in setting aside those emotions, acknowledging that they're there, taking note of what might be triggering those emotions in your external world. Um, Especially in your art practice, in your business practice, so we can kind of learn from that and maybe arrange our environment, our setting, arrange our processes, our systems around those emotional triggers. Not to have an absolute stronghold over them, because I don't think that's how emotional experience works. Um, but certainly to be weary of them. But at the same time, I do think the other end of the spectrum is, submitting to these emotions and allowing them to dictate um, your your state of being, and making those an absolute, in the sense of like, oh, I've experienced this emotion before, and therefore that is my identity, and that's just how I am, like in the past, in the present, and the future. I think that can be harmful too, because it could be limiting. Maybe you got a diagnosis some point in your life of being anxious or depressed or ADHD, whatever, PTSD, whatever could be linked to things like burnout, um, and making, performing any task that you want to, or achieving any goal that you want to, and you feel like you're falling short. You could use those diagnoses as an excuse to, either cease the pursuit of those goals. And I don't think that would be good. Obviously, I think everything is cyclical. You're going to perform differently every day, based on your energy levels, based on your emotions. These things are going to be have an effect. So I think to be on the other side of the spectrum and ignore those emotions and just like muscle through everything and just grind and just ignore them, that's where you're going to end up being burnt out. I think a lot of people have that issue, especially in the entrepreneurial space. I myself definitely fall prey to that, just trying to bulldoze through emotions. But I also fall prey to the other side of the spectrum of like over coddling myself. And, because I don't have an external force that's regulating my workflow and my activity, I don't have that employer, because I am running my own business and I am self guiding my everyday activity. I don't have that kind of, what's the word, accountability. I don't have anybody to answer to. So oftentimes in the middle of the week, I'll be like, I'm tired. I don't feel like creating. I don't feel like designing. I don't feel like reaching out to potential clients and trying to get future work in order to run my business. So I'll just rest. I'll just play video games. I'll just consume video content, watch YouTube videos. And so that can be a slippery slope too. I think burnout tends to have some sort of a snowball effect. Um, the more burnt out you feel, the more your executive function is taxed, from whether you're like forcing activity or productivity in your business or in your creative process. That tends to lead to more burnout and, um, if you're taxing your executive function, just like waking up every day and just hustling, trying to grind out production, it's going to make you more tired. It's going to make you feel more exhausted. It's going to take kind of the fire out from under you. And then that's going to make things harder to accomplish. It's going to make tasks harder to complete. And then you're just going to feel even more insecure and probably less enthused, less inspired. And then it's just a snowball effect, right? It just makes it harder to accomplish things. And then at the end of that day, you're going to feel like you didn't do much, so you're going to feel even more insecure. You're going to be like, do I even have what it takes to do this, to run this business? And it just keeps compounding over time. And I'm not saying I know how to overcome that. I don't. I'm sitting here talking to you today from somewhat of a feeling of burnout. I'm trying not to claim that so that I don't just default into lack of productivity. Here I am recording a podcast. At least I'm doing something right. But I did just start filming this podcast with a pretty inadequate amount of research in this field. It's a really nuanced field, the science of burnout and executive function. There is a lot of research behind it. There's several books and scholarly studies and articles that I could have read in order to prepare and actually regurgitate meaningful information. But I'm kind of just going at this with a strategy of I just want to talk about it and maybe talk through some of my own issues in real time, so that if you're experiencing burnout in your own work, maybe you can have a little bit of solidarity and maybe you're just trying to work through it yourself. So for me, the burnout definitely has come in different waves. I've definitely had periods of my life where I have just been overworked physically. I think back to 2022, it was probably my most productive year ever. I did something like 20 something murals. I was averaging a couple murals a month. I was making a lot of money, which was great. And probably how I was staying motivated to produce. And when I say produce, I mean I was completing full-scale projects. I was painting murals, and that, each mural project required a certain amount of executive function of planning, organizing, communicating, and facilitating, and then actually physically carrying out those projects, you know, through the manual application of my painting techniques on physical property. That's the nature of mural work in general. So I was a little bit burnt out physically because I was asking a lot of my body to get up and paint on a daily basis. But ironically, I was not burnt out emotionally. I was waking up excited every day. I had a lack of sleep because I was actually excited to get up because I had work to do, which is the opposite of my recent burnout experience of trying to wake up and stay motivated when I don't have a project on the horizon or in my daily routine. I think I much prefer to be physically exhausted. I actually really like hard work. I think I actually need it. So for me, the burnout of trying to conduct business and to seek out work, trying to find work, trying to, create content that is, it seems to me like just creating in a vacuum, sitting here at my desk, stationary, a stagnant workflow. I'm just like trying to be creative and produce content and make videos and write stuff like that, that doesn't have an immediate return. At least when I was painting those murals, I was getting paid, right? Like I had some sort of external influence, whether that's money coming in or just visual progress. Like when I'm painting a mural, I have a lot of work satisfaction, job satisfaction. So I would see the work coming together every day, whether I thought it was profound work or good or better than the last. At least I was doing something and I was feeling productive because I was completing work on a pretty regular basis. Um, Maybe I was burning myself out physically, and certainly physical exhaustion takes a toll on your emotions, and your psychological burnout then can come from that. Um, but sitting here in this state of emotional burnout, just like waking up every day and trying to make something out of my day when I don't have that kind of physical productivity satisfaction, is not fun. I would take the physical exhaustion over this kind of taxing of my self drive, this self motivation of like waking up every day, trying to make something happen, and kind of like on a micro level, a chronic micro level, forcing myself to do something so that I feel productive. I think I am the type of person that just really values working hard. And I think the only way I'm actually able to rest and relax is to have that immense output. So, knowing that about myself, and I think this is common for a lot of artists, I think the biggest struggle and the biggest um, reason for burnout in the artistic sector of entrepreneurship, which kind of just go hand in hand. I think they're kind of one and the same. Like it's hard to be a professional artist without having an entrepreneurial aspect to it, um, for better or worse, whether you like that or not. I think one of the reasons that artists burn out is because building artistic skills, whether you're successful in business or not, I think there is an urge to develop as an artist, to get better, to um, you know, progress and add on to the skills that we have. We want to see ourselves get better, and we want to have that visual progress of like, okay, I'm better at drawing. My drawings are better than they used to be. It's just such a slow process. And that's why one of my mantras is we're in this for the long game. I want to be a masterful artist by the time I'm 50 or 60. I'm 31 now. And that's really hard. You have to be really patient because although you can develop quickly by intensifying your process, by spending more hours of the day, by focusing harder, those things aren't always in our control. And that's harder to regulate. It's not as quantifiable as some other business endeavors might be, such as sales. It's not as easy as just plugging in a certain amount of hours and then seeing the direct consequences of that effort. Um, Sometimes, like I do the daily drawings. Every morning, I wake up, first thing, I draw for about 10 to 15 minutes, maybe less. Depends on the day, but I do that. And they will be like weeks at a time. And I think I'm in that currently. Weeks at a time where my drawings are not progressing. Like I'm not getting better as an illustrator or an artist in general, a drawer. Um, I'm not seeing visual progress. And in fact, sometimes I feel like I'm getting worse. Sometimes I feel like I'm allowing bad habits in my drawing process to become routine. Um, and that's really hard. So far, I haven't given up. I've been on like kind of like a 4 month streak of drawing every day, so that's good. I'm not trying to like bypass that, but and overall, I do think that even if only 5 of my drawings end up being good, I think it's worth doing every day, even if I am instilling bad habits. Um, Hopefully, I'm at least uncovering some subconscious um, stylistic qualities in my work. And if I go back and look at my daily sketchbook, I can find those. But um, definitely feeling burnt out there. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep persevering and pursuing um, my overall long term goals. And I think that the daily drawings are a part of that. And it's just so low of an investment to spend that 10 minutes a day. I have to just be okay with mediocre drawings. That's part of the bargain of doing it every day. And I do still believe that overall good is going to come from this ritual, this daily routine, this habit of drawing every day. It's part of the reason why I have that in my routine. Um, but that being said, it is daunting. It feels super depressing, kind of, to think about, oh, I'm spending a lot of my life doing this and pursuing this goal, and it doesn't seem like I'm progressing on a micro level. Like if I look at it from day to day, it doesn't seem like I'm getting better at drawing, even though I'm like dedicating this amount of time. Um, the mantra of the long haul, developing art skills and pursuing art as a passion, as a hobby, as a career, you have to look at it in the long term and keep touching base with that long term goal of it's just going to take time. We can't slip into that excuse and allowing ourselves to, take time off when we're not really burnt out. We're just feeling a little bit tired and lazy and unmotivated. I think there is merit in pushing through those negative emotions. But we do also have to recognize that there is a cyclical nature to these emotions. And there will be times where we have more energy to push and to really dive in to our development and focus and work really hard. And there has to be another side of that coin, and we need to rest. We need to relax. We need to spend time doing activities that do rebuild that drive. And we need to be aware of these things and try and be somewhere in the middle ground of that spectrum of muscling through, continuing to grind, and having a little bit of sympathy for ourselves and a little bit of, compassion for our emotional beings. So, what do the remedies look like? I think it's different for every person. I think in general, if you feel burnt out and you're finding yourself procrastinating, you're finding yourself feeling really tired, exhausted for whatever reason, whether it's emotional. I think something that I didn't talk about was like disconnect with your work. So it's really common to get burnt out in the workplace. Say you have a 9-to-5 job and you're not pursuing your creative passions. Burnout is really easy to experience if you have a disconnect with your work, with your career, and it's not linked with your passion. With your passion. Though obviously, like I said, a lot of the burnout that I've explained in this podcast has been related to your passion. Like obviously, there is potential for burnout even if you are pursuing your passion. All the examples I gave of my own burnout are that. But I have experienced the burnout of the workplace not being connected to your passion. And that one's a little bit more tricky because a lot of us don't have a choice. You're stuck in your job, whether it's because of your financial requirements. Maybe you're just not there yet where I'm at and being able to pursue my passion. But I'm only in the position that I'm in because I dove deeper into the belly of the beast, which I can't advise, but it is how I did it. I was burnt out in my job. I was working overtime. I was doing something that I didn't totally love. It was manual labor. It was exhausting physically. It was exhausting emotionally because I knew that it wasn't what I was supposed to be doing as far as like using my unique skills to bring value into the world and to experience joy in what I was doing with my life and my time and my energy. But I just made the decision to dive deeper. Not saying this is what you should do. Um, it was temporary. I knew it was going to be temporary. I crunched the numbers. I knew if I worked a certain amount of overtime, if I just pushed in this work, then eventually I would have some freedom to ultimately be able to do whatever I wanted with my time. Ironically enough, I'm now at the point where I'm burnt out from having to design my every hour of my every day. That executive function and having to plan out every second of every day has been exhausting. And here I am 5 years later after quitting that full time job, and I am finding myself almost with a desire to go back into a more of a 9 to 5 format where somebody else is telling me what to do with my time. I haven't yet reached that, but I have literally looked up jobs, part-time jobs or temporary seasonal work in order to just give myself a little bit of a break, maybe even just for a few months. I've thought about going and just like working for a house painting company again. I did that a couple years ago in order to relieve this exhaustion of trying to, run a business. Um, like I said, I haven't done it yet, but I have looked at my options, and I might still do that if I find a good fit that gives me the flexibility in the schedule to, you know, work 2 or 3 days a week for somebody else where I can just show up, clock in, get paid by the hour. I don't have to think creatively. And then maybe that will refuel my tank. Maybe that will, kind of relieve the burden of self motivation every day. I can just put in a podcast, do some manual labor, make some money, build my cash pile up again, so that I will feel less stressed and can go back to my own creative work and um, maybe be rejuvenated, maybe just have a different perspective and gratitude for my free time, so that I can use it wisely and be motivated to do so and procrastinate less. We'll see. TBD. So that's maybe something that I could do to remedy my particular burnout. Um, and just kind of slow things down too, instead of just going balls to the wall with my art business. Maybe I can just kind of pump the brakes, still keep up with these daily rituals, do the drawing, um, but then, feel accomplished, feel productive outside of my business, my art business, and not making all of my energy going towards that. I don't know. I don't know if that'll work. I think it's worked before. And maybe it's just something that I have to do cyclically. Maybe it's just something that I have to do every other year, in order to focus and stay on track for the long term. It's easy to feel like that would be a failure. I even use that as an example of giving up at the very beginning of this conversation. But if you keep that mindset and that perspective of the long term goal, it wouldn't be giving up altogether. It would actually be part of what would be maybe sustaining this business, um, both emotionally and financially. You know what I mean? Like if I'm making money elsewhere, then I can rest that part of my brain and body and my business, that is reliant upon the hustle of, painting murals, going and getting that money myself in my freelance um, business, if you will. Does that make sense? I don't know. Another strategy is similar to this, that I am going to pursue. I've mentioned it recently in another podcast, but I'm going to pursue other hobbies outside of art that I think will allow me to still build that executive function muscle in my brain, in the sense of like developing a skill and working towards another goal that will provide meaning in my life and also implement more joy into my life. And that skill is going to be tennis. I'm going to join a tennis club and spend a bunch of money every month to belong to this tennis club and pursue development in sport, in physical aptitude. Um, I'm doing this for a number of reasons. Yes, to experience more joy. I think back to my childhood of where I got joy and where I was able to experience joy in my life. And it's really hard to beat recess in school. Like for me, one of the most free I've ever felt in my life was just running around the blacktop in elementary and middle school, playing pickup football games, kickball, just running around and getting exercise through sport where you're not thinking about it. Like, I like going to the gym. I love exercise. I need exercise. I need those endorphins. I need that physical hard work um, to feel satisfied and productive and happy. Um, but there's a level of executive function that you need in order to work out and get yourself to the gym. It almost is relying upon that same motivational function in your brain to even get to the gym, to organize the workouts, to carry yourself through the workout and do each rep. Like, it takes a little bit of that drive, that internal executive motor. And the unique thing about sports that kind of bypasses it is it's like you put that function into the subconscious. Like when you're chasing a ball, you're distracted. You're like, there's a ball. I'm going to go get it. I'm going to go slap it with this racket, or catch it, whatever, depending on the sport. And that kind of bypasses that function. You're not thinking about it cognitively or consciously. You're just doing the thing like almost reactionarily. Is that a word? Let's make it one. So there's something unique about sport that does that. It's competitive. It's very in the moment, and I think that I am definitely missing out on that in my life. So I think it's a worthy investment to seek that on a regular basis. Like if I can play tennis twice a week, and for an hour or two a week, I can dedicate my time and energy to fun and receive that joy in return. And also, I think joining this tennis club is going to enhance my social interactions. Obviously, as artists, we tend to isolate, and I think that's a huge culprit. Isolation is that leads to burnout. I think social connection is something that can be a remedy. Just talking things out with your friends. It can be a distraction from whatever you're feeling burnt out on. Now, this can go too far. You can have burnout from social conflict. I think this is something that I've experienced too. So you got to make sure that you're, connecting with the right people who share your values and aren't causing you stress in your life. I've seen that in other people for sure. I know my dad experiences burnout. He deals with people who are just like incompetent all day in his job. He's in a managerial position. So if you're in a management job, you can be burnt out from socialization and working with people who aren't doing their jobs right. So that's one thing. But I think for artists in particular, entrepreneurs, we find ourselves being isolated and recluse. We often create in a vacuum. And so socialization, getting out in the world, getting out in public even just little micro social interactions, going to the coffee shop, interacting with the barista, and just having a little chit chat that doesn't mean anything can be a nice relief from your deep work, your deep internal um, thoughts and struggles that you're going through as an artist, because I know we all have those. So I think joining this tennis club is going to bring that value into my life as well. And also, it could provide relief. This is just like, dreaming and wishful thinking. And I'm trying to, like, do this for reasons outside of business. Um, but I do think there's going to be some positive overlap in just putting myself around people that are in a different field than me. If I'm creating art and surrounding myself around artists, that's good. We are trying to build a community here with this podcast and my YouTube channel. But if I go to a tennis club, there's going to be people with all kinds of backgrounds and professions and careers that I can surround myself with. Maybe there will be other artists there, who knows? But there's going to be business owners. There's going to be people in completely different fields than me that I can interact with on a daily basis, that I'll be putting myself around by going to this club. And I'm looking forward to that. There could be potential clients at this tennis club. It's an expensive club. So there's like a bottom threshold of income that people are making to even be present at this club. I'm not trying to be sleazy and make that my main objective, to just like put myself around these people in order to negotiate and network in that way. But I'm not going to lie, I'm thinking about it, and it's definitely, hopefully, going to be a positive aspect of being at that club, at least whenever I'm thinking about the cost of going to this club. I'm hoping that I can at least offset that expense through maybe some networking opportunities that I might experience at that club. So I think that at most that's going to be a subsidiary benefit, and it's not the main thing. The main thing, I'm trying to increase the amount of play in my life. It's going to encourage me to exercise more without having to tax that executive function in order to get my ass in gear and work out. I'll just be working out and having fun at the same time. I'll be building something for the long term, getting better at a skill, at a physical activity, a lifetime sport. Hopefully I can play tennis well into my 60s. I'll have to slow down, but if I start now, maybe I'll get decent. I have a background in tennis. I played a couple years in high school, and I'm probably like beginner intermediate level right now. So hopefully I can just build on that. And yeah, I'm optimistic that this will not cure my burnout indefinitely, but just give me another tool, another avenue, another place to put my energy when I still want to feel productive and exert some energy, but I don't want to do it in art because I've been burnt out for whatever reason. So that's my strategy. I think in general, getting out in nature more, going on walks, touching the earth, breathing fresh air, getting sunlight, these are things that could apply to anybody and help with burnout. Pursuing hobbies, that's what the tennis is going to be doing. Hobbies outside of art, outside of what my business is, so that I can feel refreshed and come back to my business with vigor and vitality. Those are things that I think can help with burnout. I don't really have much else as far as tips. Socialize, seek out relationships, and prioritize and invest in relationships that do bring you energy, and find that balance between socializing enough to rebuild your fuel tank, but not too much to where you're procrastinating and making it harder to complete your tasks. You don't want to invest in relationships that are going to be taking too much energy from you and leaving you feeling exhausted and like you need to recover from social outings. That's usually not a good sign. Um, but invest in the ones that do bring you energy, people that have similar goals to you. Um, you want people that are going to push you to achieve your goals and not limit you and not have smaller dreams than you have for yourself. I think that's important. Um, Focus on your health. Try and get good habits. Make sure you're exercising. Make sure you're eating healthy, because those things can be slippery slopes. You might feel burnt out and you want a treat, and you just want a little bit of, you know, a treat yourself day. And like, I think there's time and place for that. But just be careful, because a lot of the things that you'll use for a treat are, um, engineered to be addictive and will be a slippery slope. And you might just binge and want to eat more. And then it's going to tax your body and you're going to feel sick. And then you're going to be not able to produce. And then it's going to be another spiral, and a snowball effect. So just be careful. I think there's a time and place for treating yourself. Do what you got to do. Just be aware and try not to develop bad habits. I'm saying this to myself too. So don't think that I'm coming from a place of judgment. What else? Get out in nature. Talk to people. Reach out to people. Ask for help. This is something I'm horrible at. I just try and muscle through everything myself. And I probably have resources that are untapped that I could probably pursue to help me with my burnout, with my exhaustion, with my lack of motivation, with my insecurities, no doubt. And with that, I'm going to be starting some more interview-based podcast episodes. I'm going to reach out to some artists in my life that I think would have some beneficial insight outside of my own. I'm almost to the 20 episode mark. And so with that, stay tuned for some podcast interviews. I just interviewed Big Sam a couple days ago. Big Sam's Studios, Big Sam's Paints. So that'll come out probably next week. Stay tuned for that. And I appreciate you watching. Let me know what you think about burnout, what you've experienced, and remedies that you have found to be successful in recovering from burnout. I appreciate you. We'll see you next time.